Okay, we are live.
Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. It is Friday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. And we are here this afternoon to continue our discussion of H11. And if our witnesses will you be testifying on Zoom first? You're going first, right?
Yes, I
Okay, great. So we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves, and then we'll turn it over to you, and you can identify yourself for the record, okay?
Great, thank
So I'm Representative Kathleen James from the Bennington 4 District.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Klutner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Jack Locker, Committee Assistant. Dylan Zwicky, Lanark, Public Affairs.
Jeremy Crandall with CTIA.
Great. All right. For the record. Oh, sorry. Who's that? Oh, Scott. Hi.
Campbell, home. St. Johnsbury.
Okay. Anissa, if you could please identify yourself for the record and then take it away. We're here to get your perspective on H11.
Sounds great. Good afternoon, Chair James, Vice Chair Campbell. I'm Anissa Reed, and I'm here on behalf of CTIA, the Trade Association for the Wireless Industry, to respectfully oppose House Bill 11. We share the goal of Vermont consumers having reliable and high-quality wireless service. However, H11 introduces unnecessary state-specific net neutrality certification requirements, duplicative data reporting mandates, and vague restrictions on business practices. These regulations could slow broadband expansion and deployment, increase costs, and ultimately harm Vermont consumers and businesses. The U.S. wireless industry is highly competitive, driving down costs while expanding access to faster and more advanced networks. Since 2017, wireless service prices have fallen by 11%, while consumer prices for goods and services have risen by up to 28%. These benefits have been achieved without heavy-handed state regulations like those proposed in H11. Wireless broadband is an interstate service. Wireless networks do not stop at Vermont's borders, and state-specific regulations create a patchwork of conflicting rules that increase costs and regulatory uncertainty. H11 also imposes unnecessary data reporting requirements. Wireless providers already submit detailed broadband deployment data to the FCC. Adding state-level mandates creates administrative burdens, diverting resources away from expanding broadband in unserved and underserved areas, which is a shared goal. Additionally, we're concerned about the bill's restrictions on data management practices. Wireless networks operate on a limited spectrum and must be managed efficiently to ensure fast, reliable service for all users. Data management practices, including offering a range of plans, help keep networks running smoothly. In 2023, U.S. wireless consumers used over 100 trillion megabytes of data, an 89% increase since 2021. To meet this demand, providers invest tens of billions of dollars annually, including in Vermont, where the wireless industry supports more than 6,700 jobs and contributes $500 million to the state's economy. Consumers deserve to understand their service options clearly. That's why CTIA and our members created the Consumer Code for Wireless Service, a set of principles to clear pricing, transparent billing, and fair service terms. This code has been followed in all 50 states for nearly 20 years and continues to evolve to meet consumer needs. Wireless carriers want to ensure consumers have the information they need to make informed decisions when choosing a wireless plan. Importantly, more than half of the principles contained in the code speak to this important issue, with disclosure of rates and terms of service being the first commitment. Notably, Principle 5 establishes a commitment to clearly disclosing material charges. The 12 commitments made by carriers are listed publicly on our website And in addition to billing and fees, it addresses trial periods, renewals, and cancellation terms, among other items. Furthermore, H11 includes unclear compliance standards that create uncertainty for providers. Terms like burdensome conditions and reasonable fees are not clearly defined, which could lead to inconsistent enforcement and legal challenges. This uncertainty makes it harder for providers to invest confidently in Vermont's digital infrastructure. As you all know, in 2018, Vermont enacted a state net neutrality law. Rather than adding additional regulations that could slow innovation and broadband investment, we encourage policymakers to focus on policies that support faster deployment, competition, and affordability for consumers. For these reasons, we respectfully urge the committee not to move forward with H11. Thank you.
I just had a question. I might have missed this. The 12 commitments, are they a guiding document or are they binding?
Yeah, they are a guiding document. It's public commitment from our members. So the information's available on our website. So to ensure transparency and all those principles outlined.
Okay, but they're guiding principles. They're not binding or enforceable.
They are. I mean, it's a public commitment from our members. So it is quite important for them to follow through, and it's something consistently updated for the past 20 years, and the information is made public.
And if they don't follow through?
So as far as not following through, I mean, it's not a great look to consumers. It's a commitment that's made by our members. And I'll follow up on some of the more formal consequences of it, but it's important once they make those commitments to follow through and to make sure that information is readily available to the public.
Okay, Representative Sebelia?
Yeah, thank you. And I apologize, Nissa, for arriving late. Sebelia from Wyndham 2. I have a different question, but I just wanted to follow up with the chair's question. So I think you said that they are enforceable.
So it's an expectation that we have for our members, and it's been consistently followed by all of them for 20 years.
Just if we could get a clear answer though about whether or not these are enforceable.
Yes, let me follow up with you on that item. I mean, it's definitely an expectation, and again, the information's publicly available, but I can follow up with you on that item.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And just to make sure that I'm being clear, by enforceable, I mean, if you did not, if there was some violation of those, is there some public entity that would require you? Are you required to uphold those standards? That's really what.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I understand. And then there's also, as you know, I mean, there's federal transparency laws and additional oversight. But I'll get back to you on that item.
That would be great. And Madam Chair,
Sure,
I think
go ahead.
you have asked for those things to be in writing. So if you wouldn't mind sending us how these are enforceable in writing, that'd be great. And then my actual question.
Yeah.
And I think you said that the wireless industry supports 6,700 jobs in Vermont.
Yes, correct.
Could you break that down for me? Like by what types of jobs? Big categories are fine. I don't need the ones.
Yeah, so it really varies within our industry. So some of it has to do with infrastructure. Some has to do with expanding and working with consumers. So wireless industry, it's very broad, and it provides a lot of different opportunity within the state.
So can you tell me some of the types of employers that we're talking about here?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at, I mean, a lot of our members, they're on the ground there throughout the state. again, infrastructure providers that work closely and go out and deploy. So I'd say a lot of it you see on the ground is various positions such as infrastructure, and then again, our members have various employees on the ground supporting the economy in the state.
And so when you say infrastructure, you mean like antenna installers?
Yes, correct. So deploying cell towers, small cells,
Okay. And you said there are 6,700 of those in the state, employees.
yes, well, in various wireless positions. So that's just kind of an example of a few that would be under that category.
Do you have more detail that you could share with us about that breakdown and what the jobs are?
Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that.
That would be great. I think that's it for me, Madam Chair.
Okay, Representative Howland?
Do your members offer some sort of remuneration when a customer doesn't receive the level of service that they were promised?
Yeah, so we have, members, we want to make sure that there's accountability there. So when it comes to offering customer care and information, there's a way to do so through National Association of State Public Service Commissioners. So members are very responsive to customer complaints and believe in transparency. So there's a process to manage those complaints to make sure that we keep them as happy as possible.
Yeah, Representative Kleckner.
So one of the pieces in H11 on the consumer transparency relative to rates was the requirement that a rate be clearly identified as introductory or long-term. And I just flipped through your principles, but they're kind of long in many subsections, and I didn't find it quickly. Do you know if there's a similar expectation of your members?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Apologize for being muffled and masked.
Oh, no problem.
So in H11, there's a requirement that wireless categories, when disclosing their rates to consumers, identify whether the rate is an introductory rate or a permanent rate. And I wonder in your principles if there is a similar expectation of your members.
Yes, that piece of transparency is definitely an expectation that we have for members.
All right.
Let's see here. One thing I'm just thinking is that it would be interesting. I don't know if we're ready to have that conversation right now, but if the bill moves forward, it's not uncommon for legislation to start out with language that seems a bit vague or ill-defined, and then we define it to make it more clear. So I'm not asking you to comment. I'm just noting that the places in your testimony that you point out language that seems vague or that is vague is something that we could certainly work on, like burdensome conditions and unfairly restrict. Do other folks have questions for?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, sorry, Representative Campbell. I didn't see if they're on the screen.
Oh, there you go.
I'm hiding. So I guess I was just curious about the overall principle or sort of goal of this bill would be to make to try to get more accountability from wireless providers in cases where service isn't as expected or as promised, or other things go wrong. So, I mean, it seems like one of the problems is we don't have very much competition because it's such a rural state, and there's so many places that don't have any wireless service really, and places where there's really only one carrier, maybe two carriers that have any service. So people really don't have much in the way of options. So in other words, the companies aren't really regulated by the market, so to speak, because there isn't much of a market. So I guess I'm wondering about that and how the association deals with that in other parts of the country, how the association, what sort of regulation to protect consumers the association would support, and just anyway, your comments about all that.
Yeah, so starting with the competition piece. So I think the numbers have really showed again the decline in wireless prices, 11% since 2017. While we've seen other consumer goods increase, it does have to do with, going back to competition. And US is one of the most affordable countries for wireless broadband as far as supporting connectivity. As we all know, having internet is not a luxury, it's essential. We completely agree with that. A lot of it it goes back to the deployment piece and working with localities and making sure that, there's regulatory certainty and we're able to expand service for members. So some barriers do come from not being able to deploy in some areas where some of the localities don't want us to, which impacts service.
Well, and then so we also have the problem of of so many places that don't have service, and it's a rural state. Aren't that many customers. Same problem that wired service has. Few customers per mile. We don't have that many customers per, I don't know, per mile of major road. So there are a lot of places that don't have service. It's really a public safety issue. For example, between St. Johnsbury and Montpelier, most of that road, US Route 2, which is the major east-west highway in northern Vermont, most of that road does not have service, as an example. So how do we get more coverage and more service from the wireless providers without starting to ask them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge concern. Obviously, you want to make sure, it's a safety issue not having strong connectivity. I think it is going back and making sure that there's flexible policies to encourage deployment. So members can go in there and build infrastructure and improve service. Because a lot of the time don't love we hear that localities aren't happy with the look of macro towers. However, to get that service, it's necessary to build out there. So I think working with our industry to make sure we can deploy and improve service for those who need it the most.
Okay, thank you.
One question I have about that, and maybe you all are not the right source to get this information from, but I'll toss it out there anyway. I guess following up on what Rep. Campbell said, I think in your testimony you have some compelling national statistics about how market competition drives prices down. But I think what Representative Campbell was pointing out is that we often don't, I don't think our markets are as competitive. So, it'd be interesting to see whether that's true in Vermont, or the extent to which that's true in Vermont. Representative Sebeli, did you have a question?
I did. And I apologize if you presented this information previously. Who are your members? Is it all of the major cell?
Yes. So
Vermont. Who are your Vermont?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I apologize. Who are your Vermont members?
So members are such AT&T, Verizon, US Cellular, T-Mobile, for example, of some of our members, as well as American Tower, Dish. So work with various, but our our main members, as you mentioned, those carriers.
Okay, and VTEL, are they members of yours?
I'm sorry.
VTEL, are they members of yours?
No, I don't believe they are.
And do you know what the total amount of public subsidy that your members have received for coverage in Vermont?
I don't have that number in front of me.
And were any of your members eligible for ACP payments?
Yes, somewhere.
And
ACP.
those were the federal subsidies that we heard
Oh.
about.
Okay, gotcha.
Affordability,
Oh,
connectivity.
Yes.
oh,
They were-
right, okay, sorry, I wasn't with the shorthand.
Yes,
Huh.
yeah.
Okay,
And I would go a step further than the chair and say that in Vermont, we have failed markets in a lot of rural places where the population density just we have heard or seen does not really make sense. Do you have, in those places, we would typically think about public subsidy, but with public subsidy, often we want to see public regulation and accountability. Do you have any comments on your members' disposition to covering extremely rural places, extremely rural and challenging topographical? So for instance, I live in southern Vermont, as do several members here, where we have multiple mountain ranges going across, which we've heard testimony blocks signal. So do you have any sense of how your members feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to flexibility, when it comes to regulations, so such as setback requirements, height, stealth, a lot of that, when there are multiple requirements, it's more difficult to deploy and expand that service.
So are you familiar with the terrain in southern Vermont?
Yes, I've heard a lot of beautiful mountains there, and
And are you familiar with the population density in southern Vermont?
don't know the exact number, but
well, we wouldn't expect you to know the exact number.
should have came in with that number.
The exact number is 3.
Yeah, no, it's not, but it's pretty
Really
rural.
sparse.
Yeah. So of course that's, I'm interested in, I'm not sure that it's, since we don't regulate, I'm not sure that it's lack of regulation that's preventing service there. So.
Representative Howland, did you have a question?
Yeah, is your target here, are we talking about the market for connection to the home and not to the person who's traveling along the highway for a continued service?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that one more time?
So
My sound's a little-
we're talking here, I thought we were talking here about the recipient of the signal being stationary and not moving. As in, when I think of some of the companies you mentioned are looking for cellular coverage, if you will, as the client or customer moves along the highway. In other words, as Rep. Campbell said, the road between St. Johnsbury and Montpelier doesn't get a lot of service, but if you find a spot, you can get your cell service. And I don't connect to the internet while I'm sitting beside the road, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure what your target of your organization is for density of coverage with the towers they're putting in or desire to put in.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to mobile service when it comes to deployment, the towers, making sure that there are enough to cover that ground, which goes back to making sure there's investment friendly policies that our members can work with cities and towns.
Right, let's see, I think that we are out of time. And we have our next. This here, folks. Good. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak remotely as well.
You bet. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, let's see. I don't think we need a break. Is everybody okay? Great. Super. We have our next witness. Would you like to?
Bear with me a moment. I'm gonna put a chart up on the screen.
No
I
problem.
want to put the computer right on your.
You can, you're
Right,
right.
Hedi?
We're
Let
putting
us know
lines
when
down.
you're ready with the tech, and then you can introduce yourself for the record.
Sounds good.
Super.
Give me a second.
Get to look at everybody's modern technology.
You know what, and I can finish.
Oh, no, I was joking. I just check out the laptops.
Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Sure.
Let's try this one more time. You know what, Jack, I'm gonna hold off for now.
Okay.
You guys gotta keep.
That's fine. You've got it's posted on the, well, one, we have a minute, and two, I think, is it posted on the website?
Well, I had my colleague
Additional-
Claire bring some paper, but I don't want to break protocol and handing that out.
That's
Is that
okay.
okay?
Yeah, we've got some
All right.
people.
There you go, sir.
Great. So I'll just, for anybody who's watching our live stream, so this is still the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. And we are here now with Jeremy Crandall, Assistant Vice President of State Legislative Affairs for CTIA, here to talk about a different bill. We're moving now to H121, an act relating to affordable broadband service. So if you could ID yourself for the record, and thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jeremy Crandall. I represent CTIA along with my colleague who you just heard from. We are the Wireless Industry Trade Association. I am here to speak in opposition to House Bill 121. You heard a little bit previously, but as background again, our members at CTIA include AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, US Cellular, all of whom serve customers right here in the state of Vermont. I do want to begin my comments by saying that there's one thing that we can all agree on in this conversation is the importance and the fact that consumers rely on reliable and access to connectivity. But if I can emphasize one message that I leave you all with today, it is this, and this relates to the chart that I handed out. I think we can all agree that we live in a time where the cost of pretty much everything that Vermont residents and businesses are paying for is going up. Wireless is one of the few areas where the cost is going down for consumers. And I want to share a few data points with you. Looking at national numbers, since 2010, the cost of, looking at a certain basket of goods and services has gone up approximately 10%. Again, that's a national number. My colleague also mentioned in her testimony that wireless number, that is also a national number. But I do want to use Vermont specific data as well. Looking at electricity rates over the last 10 years, goes back to 2012, electricity rates have gone up nearly 20% here in the state of Vermont. That wireless number in that same time period is down 44%. If I can only emphasize, that is the data. That is the reality on the ground when you look at what the prices are that consumers here in Vermont pay. I will say we believe it's an affordability success story that ultimately benefits everyone, including low-income consumers, which I understand this bill is certainly geared towards. And I also want to emphasize, we do believe there's considerable evidence as to what paints that affordability success story. We heard a lot of conversation already about competition. Here in Vermont, it is our understanding that most of the state consumers have access to at least 2 carriers. And there are 4 of our members, I mentioned, that operate here in the state of Vermont and serve Vermont consumers. I also want to emphasize constant innovation. Anybody that, has a cell phone at this point will understand that wireless technology is constantly evolving. It evolves every single year. I will also emphasize that demand is skyrocketing. If you look at the chart in terms of how much data we use every single day, over the last 10 years, the chart literally goes like this every year. And that's not going to change anytime soon. And I also will emphasize there's extensive investment in infrastructure, including here in Vermont, to improve our networks, to always get better, to provide better services for your constituents and your consumers. And so specific to House Bill 121, those are some of the reasons why, respectfully, we strongly oppose and frankly would urge extreme caution in going down this path and considering what is essentially a price mandate policy. That is what House Bill 121 ultimately is. And I use that term purposefully because, again, that's what this bill does. It is an artificial price mandate on private companies that serve your constituents here in Vermont. And we believe there's no question that the assets that I mentioned, which are assets to wireless consumers, will be put at risk with this bill. But I do want to go just beyond wireless for a moment and speak specifically to price mandates in other sectors, if you will, because we believe there is considerable evidence that price mandates ultimately harm the people that they're intended to help, which is consumers. Over the last several months, we conducted analysis of various price mandate policies that have existed over the last 20 years, not specific to Vermont, nationwide. And I just want to share a little bit of what we found. In the state of Hawaii, they instituted a gasoline price mandate for several years. And the result was higher costs for consumers. And they ultimately did away with that gasoline price mandate. Markets with rent control. I'm sure many of us are familiar with what rent control is. When you have rent control, usually you see reduced investments and a lack of housing options. And then one other element that we found related to federal activity were price caps imposed on credit card interchange fees. And when those price caps were imposed, it led to higher costs for consumers and lower benefits for them as well.
I think we have some questions. Can we interrupt while you're going?
I have almost, or would you, I serve
That's okay,
no,
we'll
I'm
come
sorry,
Go ahead.
Representative, I serve
Up to the chair.
Do you have a little bit to go?
A
or-
little bit.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's hold our questions in.
Thank you,
I'd
Representative.
like to be in the queue.
Okay.
I do just want to end on this piece that it is important to point out that there may be significant legal implications of House Bill 121 as well. The bill as drafted may directly conflict with federal law that does prohibit regulation of wireless prices. And I'm happy to talk more about why that is our analysis. But I'll just end with this. Access to connectivity is critically important. I don't want it to be missed either that our members do provide a range of plans, offerings, and initiatives that are geared towards affordability for low-income consumers. Some of these are as low as $20 per month, specific to internet. And so for sure, we have a lot of progress we still have to make, but we firmly believe this is not the way to get there. We have plenty of evidence that the current construct for wireless is working for many consumers in terms of affordability. And when price mandates have been imposed elsewhere, the outcome is not one that ultimately benefits consumers. So I appreciate your patience, Representative.
You were up first. Something?
Yeah, I was trying to think through or understand better the sort of comparison to like a price cap on gas in Hawaii, rent control, because those seem to me to be caps imposed uniformly across an entire market sector, as opposed to a price break for a small and clearly identified group of, like, say, eligible low-income folks. So that doesn't seem like the same to me.
Well, Madam Chair, to be candid with you, there are not many price mandate policies that exist here in the United States. So when we were conducting that analysis, it was a challenge to find, an apples to apples comparison. And so, we looked hard and far and wide, and these were ones that we could find that had some sort of, synonymous comparison to what you all are looking at here.
To me, a more apt comparison would be something like LIHEAP, where, income eligible Vermonters get fuel assistance.
Madam Chair, I appreciate you mentioning that. I think Live Heap is a good example where Live Heap is not a price mandate at its core. I'm not an expert on Live Heap, but I want to be totally transparent there.
Well, neither am I actually. I'm just trying to find like where the true analogies.
So Live Heap, as far as I understand, having worked in this space generally in state politics for 20 years, is that Live Heap is at its core a subsidy program.
Mhm.
It is not an artificial price mandate.
Yeah.
Medicaid comes to mind as a price mandate to provide health care to low-income people. It is public and it's
Live
problematic.
is publicly funded.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think your examples were instructive on a broad level or do not apply to this case at all because it's across the board. There's plenty of opportunity for your companies to make the money on non-low income people. And indeed, you said that some of them are already offering a $20 plan, right? So why would they object to, they're already offering it, why would they object to it just being stipulated that they need to provide it?
I appreciate that question because number one, what we are talking about here is again an artificial price mandate. Number one. Number two, because the terms and provisions in terms of the range of options that consumers here in Vermont and nationwide pay when it comes to their wireless services are driven by, yes, the market, by competition within a given market, by consumer demand for services, and also the cost of growing our networks, which I have to emphasize. Again, this is an important conversation about affordability, but growing our networks is expensive. $30 billion was spent in 2023 alone to grow the nation's networks. I do know, speaking to our members based here in Vermont, their investments are in the tens of millions of dollars each year over a given amount of years. And so I really have to emphasize that the prices that we all pay, including myself as consumers, are driven by those market forces. And again, I also point back to that 44% reduction, also driven by market forces, not an artificial price mandate. And I will just add one other thing, Representative. I know that you all are familiar with the New York law, that is now in force. There are bills now in New York to lower that price mandate to 10, 5, I believe. I know for sure 5, and I believe there may even be a bill lowered to $0. And so I don't think there's a better example of what is an artificial price mandate for our providers.
And that bill has gone through the courts and been deemed legal, correct?
So I'm happy we're happy to take a deeper dive on the New York law. So first of all, I want to emphasize in talking about New York that at its core, we believe it's bad policy. I'm more than happy to discuss the legal ramifications of it, but our opposition at its core is, as you've heard from me already, that it's not a good policy approach to take. The New York law is in effect. I do know that you all have heard from during your hearings that one provider that is a member of ours has stopped providing fixed wireless service in the state of New York, and has said explicitly it is because of the passage of that law going into effect. And I really want to emphasize this because, Representative, was something that you all were talking about with the last bill, specific to our members in the wireless space. The internet that we provide is the fixed wireless access internet. It is the most popular in terms of new adoption internet available to your constituents. And it also skews on the affordability side. It is one of the more affordable options. And so I don't think there's a better example of this policy will have unintended consequences that will harm the exact issue that you all are trying to address here, which is affordability. And our members are as well. We want plans to be affordable for our consumers.
So can you give us an example of fixed wireless, just so we're all clear what that means?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the example that you probably have seen in the news, specific in New York, is called Internet Air. That's AT&T's internet offering. I will also share that the other 3 members, US Cellular, T-Mobile, and Verizon, all offer some version of fixed wireless here in the state. But specifically what it is, on the wired side, you have a fiber cable running to your home. On the fixed wireless side, it's a box kind of like what you have in the middle there that acts essentially as a mini cell phone or a mini cell tower that connects to other pieces of our infrastructure to deliver your internet to the home.
Okay, I don't know whose hand is up first. Representative Southworth, I think. Representative Southworth.
You had mentioned that this will possibly have legal implications against federal law.
Yes.
Can you give us any examples of how that would do that? And if not, that's fine. It's just be interested to know how you think it conflicts.
Yeah, Representative, I'm sorry, that was in your question and I didn't, somebody's question, I didn't follow up on that. I apologize. So what I want to specifically mention on that, first of all, I'm not our legal counsel at CTIA. So I'm happy to follow up if you need more details. But related to mobile broadband services, federal law is very clear that the Federal Communications Act prevents states from regulating prices for mobile services. And again, I mentioned that fixed wireless, we believe that's one of the best innovations in our space as it relates to the New York law. But this is what I want to emphasize on the legal piece. The bill before you, in our analysis, House Bill 121, is not the New York law. They are not the exact same bill, if you will. And so the way we view House Bill 121 may very well include mobile broadband services as well, which is expressly in conflict with federal law. So at some level, it is a distinction between the two bills where we feel there are some significant legal challenges.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Sevilla and then Representative Campbell has his hand.
I want to thank you for bringing this. It is incredibly helpful. So, before I kind of talk about why it's helpful, I was looking up the source for the data, and I could not find it. And I did not see it in your testimony. So is that something you could follow up?
I'd be more than happy to.
Thank you.
Would you like me to speak to it briefly? Or
I would
just
love
follow?
to see it.
Yes, I mean, I'd be happy to verbally tell you and then obviously
Sure.
follow up. On the electricity data, we had a group called AACG affiliated with Northeastern University, developed the best water and electricity data. We can only get one of them here in Vermont on the electricity side, pulled from the best municipal and state utility resources available. It's not always the best data, the easiest data to get. And then on the wireless side, that is collected from our members. What rates have they charged over that time period?
Okay, so that is not cited. Just the electric is cited, right?
So the source on the bottom there, that is a report that I'd be happy to follow up with you and provide to you. That report covers both data sources.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you. You have laid out here, what we are seeing in terms of the pricing with electric and fixed wireless. And so you're just fixed wireless. You are not cellular. That's right.
In terms of what I'm speaking of,
In terms of this
that
statistic,
is wireless writ large.
does that include cellular?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So in Vermont, our electric goes to everyone that wants electric, right? And so those lines can be very expensive. We've got folks here who've tended lines, I think, I don't know. But to maintain, to build, to repair after climate change, et cetera. Have you estimated what it would cost if you had to construct a network that covered every address that is covered by electricity in Vermont? What the impact would be on the prices?
Covered a cellular network covered by electric. I'm sorry, it sounded like.
So in Vermont, you're looking at rates that include service to every Vermonter. We regulate this, right? That wants it. The data on wireless is just for where you cover. And my question is, which is not every. Do you have estimates of what the impact would be on your rates if you had to cover every home that was electrified, say. So if we were comparing apples to apples in terms of coverage.
So I do not have that data point for you today.
Okay.
I would be happy to, well, I want to follow up on something, I was in the room with the dialogue previously. I just do want to emphasize that Representative Sibilia, you raised the topography of the state of Vermont, including southern Vermont, and I have not lived there, but I am familiar with it. And I do want to emphasize in talking about this conversation about coverage, which I'm hearing you. Wireless at its core is a line of sight technology. And Vermont is a mountainous state, and I know that's something you all love about it. It's something I love in coming here on a personal level. But I want to emphasize there is a direct line, if you will, between topography, connectivity, and the amount of wireless infrastructure that it takes to ensure that connectivity, which I hear you're talking about. And there are many other policy dynamics related to that conversation that I don't want to be lost here.
Yeah. And let's see, there was another, yes, just to, I think it was Representative Southworth asked about the federal law. Would you be able to provide the citation for that law as well?
The Federal Communications Act?
Oh, it's the Federal Communications Act.
Yes,
Excuse me.
I would
The section that you are referencing?
Section 332, but I'd be more than happy to follow up with you.
332, that's fine. That's it. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Sure. Rep. Torrey?
Just a quick question, and this might not be something you can help with. I'm just curious about your awareness of other state approaches to affordability, because we just listened to our 10-year telecommunications plan yesterday. And very clearly rural can't pay for rural, and we're trying to figure out how do we support people. Are there states that you're aware of that are using state support to advance affordability?
Yes, Representative, thanks for that question. So yes, this is a popular topic this year, and of course it goes without saying you all have heard about the Affordable Connectivity Program at the federal level, which our members were strong endorsers of and participants in. There are a range of policy discussions going on in a range of states. But I will say, and Madam Chair referenced LIHEAP at the top, there's some good seeds there in terms of LIHEAP and in terms of the Affordable Connectivity Program. And in terms of, I know there are other bills in other states that look at that type of model as a way to both provide affordable connectivity for consumers, but also not impacting this, the 44% that I keep talking about, which we believe is critically important to consumers here in Vermont. But I'd be more than happy to follow up with you on that as well, in terms of more specifics.
Sure.
Yeah.
Senator.
Oh, yes. Rep. Campbell, you're
thank you.
instead of patiently sitting in the corner.
Yeah, I'm trying to be patient. Following up on Rep. Torrey's comment is what I'm interested in. This bill is really about how to provide low-income households with affordable service. So it's not about pricing per se. It's about this specific issue, and certainly one way that has been done in telephones is the Universal Service Fund approach, which is essentially a tax on everybody's service in order to provide a subsidized service to folks who qualify. I'm wondering whether the CTIA and the providers would support some approach like that, perhaps even a public-private approach where there's a small fee on people's cell bills and that the provider companies also match in order to provide a fund that could buy down subsidize the service for qualifying low-income households.
Representative, address the camera.
However you wish.
Okay. Representative, thanks for that question. First and foremost, I'd be remiss, I represent our members. And so, a policy question like that would have to follow up with them to get back to you on that. But I do want to point out, and what Representative Campbell was referencing, there is a Lifeline program that exist that I think you all have heard about in the testimony this week. But it is important to keep in mind that when a revenue generator is applied to wireless consumers, that's going to affect those consumers. And the manner in which that is often done disproportionately impacts low-income consumers. But that being said, Representative, happy to chat with our members and get back to you about that.
Great.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
bit more Scott?
No, hold on. Thank you.
Okay.
How many fixed wireless customers do your clients have in Vermont?
That is not customarily information that, there's a certain level of proprietary information that is shared.
We're all friends.
Representative, I stand by my first statement. What I would say is, same thing. Let me confer with our members. What I will say, I do just want to share a couple of data points. It's not a direct answer to your question. But I said at the top that it's the most popular new type of internet, if you will, new, advanced, emerging technology type of internet. 90% this is a national number. 90% of all new broadband subscribers nationally are choosing fixed wireless as their option. And those 4 carriers that I mentioned that operate here in Vermont, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and US Cellular, as far as I understand it, all offer a fixed wireless option here in parts of the state. That's
Go.
Well, yeah, is Comcast, Xfinity part of your group?
they're not.
So I know they offer mobile plans as well now. Yeah.
They're not. They are not part of our board of directors. They're not, sort of in the core of our membership.
Mhm.
I just had a follow-on question to Rep Mara, and then we'll go.
Well, no,
So, sorry, so Xfinity, Comcast, not a member, you said.
So, Madam Chair, so we have, CTIA has board of directors
Yeah.
that drives our policy direction, that directs our policy people that we speak to. I believe that, we have sort of lower tier where, they may be listed on documents, but they're not a core member of our organization. I would put Comcast in that category.
Okay.
We represent those wireless entities that I spoke to.
The reason I asked was that I was just going to ask you to speculate, and you probably can't. But why one huge provider is able to offer this kind of a program for low-income customers and others don't or can't or aren't?
She's referring to their fixed wired program where they offer for
Yeah.
70 megabyte second service for $15, all inclusive. If you qualify under the certain low income certifications.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Morrow. And I heard.
Thanks. Yeah.
That's it. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was trying to get to the same thing as Rep Campbell was talking about. If we're trying to figure out a way to help low-income folks be able to afford these services, and it's hard to find a way forward.
So I'll just say this, it's not my role to speak on behalf of Comcast. I'll defer to them
Right.
and organizations that they are members of. I do have to point back to my previous comments about New York, that, one of our members that offers fixed wireless here in the state, they said in their press release, in their public comments, we are ceasing that type of service, which is, in our view, an affordable service for the folks that ultimately, hearing you, Madam Chair, that you're talking about trying to provide some sort of affordable pathway for. They said, we're going to cease that operation because of a law similar, not the exact same, but similar to the bill that's before you. And I also don't want it to be missed again that, number one, our members that operate here in the state have affordable internet option pathways, number one. But I also do want to point back to that it not be missed that the dynamics that exist within the wireless industry are what lead to that 44% reduction that we're talking about. So can progress be made? Absolutely. But please I don't want that to be missed, that the in the wireless space, the dynamics that exist ultimately benefit consumers.
Would your members in Vermont be defining affordable as just prices driven lower by the market, or How do they define affordable, I wonder?
That's a question I've never been asked before. So first and foremost, I welcome asking our individual members that question. But at a core level, competition does exist in the wireless space. This is an important for Vermont, like any state, has its own unique challenges. But it is a reality that competition exists in wireless at a level that is quite different to many other industries. And so it is it behooves us to offer effective service to as many people as we can in as many places that we can. And each of our members have to compete with each other to provide all of that to a consumer.
Rep. Clapper?
I'm just looking up AT&T's press release from their withdrawal from the New York market. But the chair called on me before I found any data in that article, which is fine.
Sorry.
I'm just wondering, that seems like an odd decision to me for a company of AT&T's scale and scope. And I wonder sort of how many customers in New York they were expecting to be required to provide this low-cost service to. It just seems like given New York's demographics and socioeconomic spread that it's a little bit hard for me to intuitively feel that there was a big economic threat to AT&T's business in New York, but they made a decision.
Representative, would you like me to
Please.
Yeah. So a couple things. First of all, at the risk of a little bit, I'm not trying to repeat myself. I apologize, but I really have to emphasize this point because Representative, I asked each of our individual members that do work here in Vermont that specific question. And the first thing they said to me is, I don't know that it's realized by anyone outside the telecom space how expensive our infrastructure actually is, what a cell tower costs, and all that goes into deploying it in terms of engagement with the community and all that, which is critically important. It's critically important. And so when you're talking about trying to stand up what is a new, very exciting, if you will, technology that doesn't require fiber to a home, there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into being able to deploy that. And I will mention, and forgive me, Representative, I don't remember who mentioned it, but during the Q&A earlier this week on this bill, there was a discussion of, well, okay, if there's a $20 benchmark and the average plan in terms of wireless is in the $50, $60, maybe $70 range, what happens in that middle amount? And I just go back to our infrastructure is expensive. We are continuing to invest. And the data from our perspective does not say that let's set an artificial price mandate to solve or address this policy question that's before you.
Do the towers, this is just a technical question. I don't understand how it works. The same towers you put up for mobile wireless are the ones you use for fixed wireless?
In part, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So
yeah, so you're building out that wireless infrastructure and then regardless, and then you're piggybacking on that for the fixed wireless antennas, or can you explain how that works a little bit?
I'd be happy to. So at its core, fixed wireless, the internet that I'm talking about functions very much like your cell phone. It functions in the same manner as your cell phone. If you think about the amount of data that we use from an internet perspective inside our own home, it's a significant amount more than we may use on our smartphone. Although I would say that gap is narrowing pretty significantly considering how much we all do on our iPads and our smartphones. But essentially it is the same highway that we're talking about. And when you are talking about that being, 90% of new customers are choosing fixed wireless, you're talking about a significant amount of infrastructure that you're going to have to expand, add to that tower or towers otherwise.
Just because of the bandwidth, not because of the technology.
I'd say it's both, but yes. And Representative, I'd be more than happy. We have a significant amount of information that paints the picture of what fixed wireless is, and I'm happy to follow up about that.
Sure, great, thank you.
All right, let's take one more question and then we need to, I think Sergeant at Arms is probably here.
So the fixed wireless, the antenna, the cell phone stays stationary and a lot of data comes to control the internet. But if that cell phone then goes in the pocket and travels down the road, the amount of data that's required to carry on a voice is much less.
Correct. Correct.
And so I got my answer. Thank you.
We have an engineer in the house. All right. Great. I think, thank you so much for joining us. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it, especially if you traveled to be here.
It's a great state, no complaints.
Yeah.
Make a motion to
Get
go
out
into
before the
executive
storm.
session for security training.
Yes, assuming they're here.
There.
You just
Poke their head in.
Super. We are going to move into executive session for security training. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, wait to vote. It's been moved. All in favor? Aye. All right, we are moving into, Scott.
Are you gonna, you're gonna go off of YouTube, but you're gonna stay on Zoom, is that so?
Can you discharge everybody by hand, right?
So we can just have the Zoom call. This won't be live streamed to YouTube. So
Super.
it'll just be this.
Okay, so we have moved into executive session for a security